Hello and welcome to the section on Power Automate. In this video, we're going to be continuing with project number 1 and we will be moving on to step number 3. So in step number 2, we created the new email trigger, which we checked for any incoming emails. And if the subject was set to support, we would update our SharePoint list with the support details and send a reply email to the user with a unique number and the body of their email that was formatted in HTML. In step number 3, we will be taking that a bit further and we will be adding the functionality to monitor for any reply emails. And if the subject is set to RE support and having a unique number, it will perform the actions to update the list in SharePoint. So let's scroll down and have a look at the steps that we're going to be performing. We could perform this in two different ways, either by creating a new trigger and having the reply functionality separate to the new email functionality, but I would like to combine this into one trigger, and I will do that by creating a new email arrives trigger, same as we did in the previous video. But what we'll be doing differently is we'll be creating a condition, and that condition will check for the subject. And if the subject is equals to support, it will perform all of the actions that we implemented previously. Then in the second step, we are adding another conditional that will check for the subject of RE support. And if it's set to RE support, we'll be adding our functionality to update our SharePoint list with the new email that the user has sent, or the reply email that the user has sent. So in step number 4, we need to get the unique number of the ticket, and that is available in our subject, which would be RE support, and then the ticket number. So we need to use a text function to extract the ticket number and delete the RE and support. And we will do that by using the text function called substring. And substring takes on a text value and it takes a starting position. So in our case, the text value is our email subject, which in this case is RE support and then the unique ticket number. And the starting position is where the value for the ticket number starts. So in our case over here, what you see on the screen, it is position where the T starts. What this function will do, it will return only the unique number, which we will need to update our SharePoint list. So if we look at SharePoint, we have our column for our ticket number, and this is not a text value, although it's stored as a text value, but the value that would be stored there is a unique number. It's not RE support. So that is the reason why we need to extract that with the substring. Once we have our unique number, we need to get the item from our SharePoint list, and we will be doing that in step number 5. So Power Automate has two functions to get values from SharePoint. We can either use getItem, which will return a single item from our SharePoint list. Unfortunately, we cannot use this function because we don't have the unique ID of the item that's stored in SharePoint. The only unique value that we have is what we have from our step number 4, which is the ticket number. So what we need to do, we need to use getItems, which will return all of the items in our SharePoint list. So there's two ways that we can filter this. We could use a for each function that would go through each of those items and only return the value that is defined by the criteria that we specify. This is a bit resource intensive, so what we'll be using is OData. OData is a way to query data within your SharePoint environment, and the syntax that we'll be using is title, EQ, and then the subject ticket number. So the subject ticket number is what we returned in step number 4. Note that we're using title and not ticket number. If we look at our SharePoint list, you can see over here the column is ticket number and not title. The reason I'm using title is because when we first created the list, this column over here was set to title, and that was the default name of the column. So the internal name is still set to title, but the display name is set to ticket number. So if we use ticket number in our query over here, it wouldn't work. You have to use title. If you did it on a different column or you created a new column and gave it a name of ticket number, this query would work, but it's not going to work on the title column. Then we move on to number 6, where we will update our list. So we will update our information in our list with the the message of the email that we receive from the user, and we will update it with a comment of new email has arrived. You could put any comment that you wanted in there, but I will just leave it as new email arrive. So to do that, we'll use apply to each. This is also a loop, but it's not resource intensive because we're only using the value of the item that's returned over there. So it will only go through our list once, and it will update the value of the item that matches this query over here in step number 5. And then we'll update our SharePoint, the item with the ID that we're getting from step number 5. We'll update the ticket number, we'll update the message, and we'll set the value of the status and also the comment. Some of the fields that are required fields, you'll need to enter the information again, so such as ticket number and status, but we will be setting it to the same value that's existing in the database. You can't leave these values blank because they're required fields. Hop over to our Power Automate portal. So if you go to flow.com and we go to our triggers for check email, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to select this option and I am going to make a copy of it. So I'm going to say save as, and I will just give it a name of trigger check email V2. You can give it any name that you want, or you could also update the existing one. But if something goes wrong, it's good to have a backup of it. That's why I've created a version number 2. So if we click save, this will save our trigger. I'm going to go back to trigger check email, and I'm going to select it again. I'm going to click on the 3 dots, and I'm going to turn it off. So the reason I'm turning it off because it's checking for the same values as our new trigger that we're going to be using. So I don't want this to be running twice. If we click on the plus sign of our new trigger, let's actually rename this. So if we click on edit and we select it at the top here, and we can just remove that the copy. And we can see over here we have all of our functionality that we had before. So what I'm going to do, so we have our when a new email arrives. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to advanced options, and I'm going to select the subject, and I'm going to remove that. Previously, we were checking for new emails that came through that were filtered on subject, um, where the subject equals support. So now we're going to add a conditional, and we're not really going to need that anymore, so we're not going to use that. So let's remove that. And another thing that we're going to be doing is we've got our compose from. This is still required because we need the information from the user. We also need the subject. So what I need to do, I need to add another compose, and this will be for the subject. We could be getting that from our when a new email arrives, but I'd prefer to have that as a compose. So let's click on add new action. And if we type compose, and we go to compose data operation, and the input for this will be subject. And let's just give this a name, so we can rename this, and we can type over here compose minus subject. Let's just click out there to save it, and let's just minimize that. What I want to do after the get user profile, I'm going to add a conditional. So if we say add, and over here we can see we've got an option for conditional. If you don't see it in your list, just search your actions for conditional. And you can see what that does. It adds an if yes and an if no. And the value that we're going to be filtering on is our compose value that we just created for our subject. And let's just look for subject over here for compose and put that in there. And if we, so is equal to support. And if that condition is true, it's going to perform these functions over here. So the first thing that we need to add to our conditional is the ticket number. So we can see over here we have the ticket number over here, which is our unique ticket number. We could leave it up here, but I prefer to have all of the variables and functions that are performed within here in our conditional. Then we will have create item. So we can move that up. Under create item, we can also have item link, which is this one, get item. And then lastly, what we're going to have is send an email. Let's just click on here and check if we've got all of our values that are correct. So we've got the subject equals support plus our unique number, which is in our ticket. And we've got the to, which we're getting from, the compose from. And then the variables that we have in our email that we're sending our user, we've got the display name, we've got ticket number, and we also have a link to our SharePoint item. Great, so this is pretty much the same as what we had before. So if we receive an email and the subject is set to support, is equal to support, it will perform these actions as we had before. And what I want to do is click on if no. And what we will do over here, we will add another conditional. And let's say control. And for this, we're going to be adding a conditional that says if the subject is equal to RE support, then it's going to be performing a number of actions. So let's again add compose subject. So if we scroll down, we can see over here we've got compose subject, and if it contains RE support. So let me just show you what I mean by the RE. If we go over to my Outlook, which I am logged in private browser mode in for user test 1, and if we look at the email over here and we click on reply, and we expand this over here, you can see over here we have our subject. We have our ticket number, which is our unique value that we need to get. And we also have RE colon support. Let's just go back to our flow. So the first step that we need to do is in our conditional, we need to check if this value is true. So if our subject contains RE and support, we need to add another action. And this action is going to be a text function. And if you type text function, you can see over here we have our text functions, and in there we have find text position and substring. So if you click on the information button over here, it gives you some information, returns a substring of the characters from the string. So the string that we're going to be entering here is our subject. So let's select substring. And the text that we, like I said, we're going to be entering is our subject, and the starting position is number 12. So as I mentioned before in my presentation, let's just have a look over here. The starting position of our text value is at position number 12. So let's look at our email that we're going to be sending. You can see over here we have RE, and the position where this number starts is at position number 12. That is the reason why we need to add number 12 into our action there. So let's move on to the next step, and that will be to get items. So let's click on add action, and you can type over here get items. And that is a SharePoint action. You can see over here we've got the option, as I mentioned, get item or get items. So we have the two. We can't use get items because we don't know the ID of the item in our SharePoint list. So what we need to do is say get items. And in get items, we will select our SharePoint site. And I think it was the ticketing system. We need to enter the list name. And this was tickets. And over here, this is where we enter our OData information. So over here we need to type title, EQ for equals, and in inverted commas, we can go to our dynamic content and we can get our substring that we created in this variable over here. So let's just search for it. And you can see over here, we have title, space, EQ, space, open inverted commas, and the substring that we created over here. So this substring is just going to be our value, which will be the unique ticket number. It's not going to include the RE subject. Great. Let's add another action, and this action will be applied to each. So we need to update our SharePoint list, but we can only do that by applying it to each value that complies to this query that we've created over here. It's not going to update multiple items because only one of those items in our SharePoint list should have the unique ID or the unique ticket number, not ID. So let's type over here, apply each, apply to each. And you can see over here, we've got the control to apply to each. If you click on the information icon, it says executes a block of actions for each item in the input array. Let's click on the item to add it. And in the input array, you could add multiple values, but I'm going to select the value, and this is the list item that will be returned by our get items. So if we add that, we can add another action within this apply to each, and this is where we will be updating our item in our SharePoint list. So let's select update item. And you can see what's returned over here. So we have update item, get item, update file properties, create item, and so forth. But what I want is the update item. You need to enter the SharePoint site. In our case, it's the ticketing system. If your site is not displayed over here, you can enter custom value and you can just copy and paste it or paste the URL. List name is tickets. The ID is the unique ID, so that we're getting over here from the value, and we can enter the ID over here for get items. Notice over here, list name is required, site address is required, ID is required, and ticket number is required. I don't want to overwrite the ticket number, so I could be using the ticket number that is returned from our substring, but maybe if there's, for whatever reason, an error, then we'll be updating the wrong information in our SharePoint list. So I'll be using the ticket number that's returned from our get item. So that's returned from this item over here. And you can see over here, get items, and we have our ticket number. So this value has to be entered. Like I said, you could use this over here, but I think it's a better practice to use the ticket number. You could enter the email address, the message if you wanted to. So I want to add the message, and the message that I'm going to be entering is the email that we received from our user. So the reply email that our user has sent us. If we scroll up, you can see over here we've got the composed body, and this information is coming from our email that's been received. So I will go all the way to message, and let's scroll down under our dynamic content, and we should have somewhere over here a subject, which is not what I want. I want our composed value. So compose body. You could also use the the content from the email, but we've created our compose data over here, so I think it's better to set that. The default value of our status is set to new, so this might not be true if the status of our ticket has been changed. So if we look at status, we don't have any items over here, but if the status was in progress or completed or deleted or whatever, and we set it to new, that would be wrong. So what we need to do is click on the drop down, and we can see we've got an option for custom value. If you click on custom value, we can again get the value that's already been entered in our list, and that is from the get item. So if we scroll down under get items, and we see over here um, status value, we will enter that value into our list. So it's the same value that's in our list, we're just updating it with the same value. And then over here, we can add a comment. So the comment can be any comment that you want. In my case, I will say new email has arrived. Let's just type that properly. So the reason I say new email has arrived, because if a technician is working on the tickets and they can see over here on the ticket information, there will be a comment, and the comment will be for a new email has arrived. So then they'll know to click on it and look at the message. So that is the logic behind there. But if you want to add a different text over here, you can, or you could leave this text out. But I'll leave it as is. And I think that's great. Let's save this and see if we have any errors. It looks like there's no errors. And what we want to do is test it. So if we click on test, and we can say manual test, and let's just say save test. And what I'll do is I'll go over to my Outlook. And remember, I'm logged in as test1. So this is a different user to the user that I'm logged in this window over here. You can see over here I'm logged in as the administrator. So I'll be logging in as test1 and sending an email to my admin. So let's just discard that because we're not going to reply. We're going to create a new message. So if we click new message and we type in admin and we set the subject to support. And the message that we'll be sending support is, dear support, please can you Yep. So we'll be typing over here, dear support, please can you create a new SharePoint site? You could enter any text over here. This is just for testing purposes. And I will say over here, thanks, test one. And if we send this, we give it a minute and we can see if we receive a reply email. Okay, great. So we can see over here in our inbox, we have a new email. This is exactly the same as what we had before. We can see over here, dear test one. So this is the reply message that they're sending us. Thank you for your message. One of our support specialists will contact you regarding your email. Please note that the reference number for your ticket is, and here we see a unique ticket number. If we click on the My Ticket, and you can see here we have all of our information stored in our SharePoint list. So I think that's great and that's perfect. That is what we implemented previously. So if we go back to our SharePoint, if we go back to our Power Automate and we click on Edit and we test it again and we say manual test, let's test it. So what we need to test now is what happens if the user replies to this email. So imagine this ticket has been logged and the user goes on vacation, or they come back to the office on Monday and there's still no progress. The SharePoint site hasn't been created and the user wants their site to be created. So what they do, they will send a reply email to remind them. So in our inbox, they will go to reply and they will say, dear support, please can I get so dear support, please can I get an update on my ticket? Thanks, test one. If we look over here and we expand it, you can see over here we've got RE and support and then our unique ticket number. So this is what our action is going to be checking on. So if we click on send and we go back to our SharePoint list, so we can see over here we have a new entry and here's the email that I sent support. dear support, please can I get an update on my ticket? And underneath there, we can see the information that was in the body of the email that I sent them. So that is this information over here. Great, I want to minimize that. And if we go back to Power Automate, and so if we look at the output and we go to the option for no, we can see over here, let's just expand that. Condition 2 was true. You can see over there we've got a tick, and it says over here that the value is true. And if yes, we're getting our ticket number. So the input was RE support 2021-01-13-6107, and the output of that action is just a numerical value. And if we look at get items, you can see over here, this was also successful. You can click over here to look at your data. This is the data that was sent to SharePoint. You can copy it and try have a look at it. It's in JSON format, so it's a bit difficult to read. But if we move on to the next action, and that was to apply to each, this was also successful. It only updated one item, and if we click on that item, you can see the information that was updated. And let's just close all of these windows. Again, if we go to our SharePoint list and we refresh this and click on the item, you can see all of the information that was set there, and the status is still in new. No one has changed that, and you can also see over here the comments, new email has arrived. In the next video, we're going to be looking at the status change. So if someone goes in here and edits it, so the person has sent them an email asking them for feedback, why am I not getting update on my ticket? The person who's responsible for this, currently no one is responsible, it's not assigned to anyone. So when a person assigns it to them, the user will get an email, and also when the user who's responsible for this changes the status to let's just have a look over here. So the status will be changed to in progress, pending, or closed. So any of those status change, the user will receive an email. Great, so this brings us back to our presentation, and we completed the option step number 3. And like I said, we'll be moving into step number 4 and then finalizing our application. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.